The tension at Sunday dinner had been building for 45 minutes, ever since I'd walked through the front door of my childhood home carrying my laptop bag. Mom had immediately launched into her usual routine of worrying about my unconventional lifestyle, while Dad had spent the first course grumbling about how I dressed too casually for a 30-year-old professional. "Look at your sister," Mom said, gesturing toward Jessica, who sat perfectly composed in her business suit despite it being Sunday evening. "She's got a real career, a real salary, benefits. She's building something stable." Jessica smiled, that practiced smile she'd perfected during her MBA program. "The pharmaceutical industry offers excellent growth opportunities, Alex. I could probably get you an interview in our IT department. It's still computers, but it's legitimate work." I pushed my mashed potatoes around my plate, trying to remember why I'd agreed to family dinner after avoiding it for the past 2 months. Nothing had changed. To them, I was still the family disappointment who dropped out of law school to mess around with computers, instead of pursuing a respectable career. "An IT department job would be perfect," Dad chimed in, warming to the subject. "Regular hours, steady paycheck, room for advancement. You could finally move out of that basement apartment and get your life together." "I like my apartment," I said quietly. "It's a basement," Mom exclaimed. 30 years old and you're living like a college student. When I was your age, I already owned a house." Dad set down his fork with more force than necessary. "That's what I'm talking about. No direction, no ambition. Just sitting in that basement all day playing video games." "I don't play video games, Dad. I work." "Work?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What you do isn't work, Alex. Work is what your sister does. Work is what I did for 35 years at the bank. Work is showing up somewhere every day, contributing to society, earning an honest living." I felt the familiar knot forming in my stomach. 3 years of building quantum solutions from nothing, 3 years of 18-hour days and sleepless nights, 3 years of turning down social events to focus on code and client meetings, and they still saw it as playing around. "Maybe if you explained what you actually do," Jessica suggested with that condescending tone she'd mastered in business school. "I mean, besides the computer stuff." "I run a software development company," I said for what felt like the 100th time. "We create custom solutions for businesses that need specialized technology infrastructure." Dad waved his hand dismissively. "Buzzwords. That's all I ever hear from you. Buzzwords and technical jargon. If it was a real business, you'd be able to explain it in plain English." "I've tried explaining it. You just don't want to listen." "Don't get smart with me," Dad snapped. "I'm trying to help you see reality. You're 30 years old, Alex. 30. Do you know what I'd accomplished by 30? A house, a wife, 2 kids, and a promotion to assistant manager," I recited. It was a speech I'd heard countless times. "Exactly. And what do you have? A basement apartment and a computer." Mom reached across the table to pat my hand. "Sweetheart, we're just worried about you. This computer phase has gone on for so long and you have nothing to show for it." "Phase?" I pulled my hand away. "It's been 3 years, Mom. It's not a phase." 3 years of failure," Jessica added helpfully. "At some point you have to cut your losses and move on." I looked around the table at my family, the same people who used to brag about my straight A's, my academic scholarships, my early acceptance to law school. Now they looked at me like I was a disappointment they had to tolerate out of obligation. "Stop playing with computers and get a real job," Dad shouted across the table, his voice echoing off the dining room walls. "You're 30 and still acting like a child." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not because they were particularly harsh, I'd heard worse from him, but because of how dismissive they were. 3 years of building something from nothing and he still saw it as child's play. Before I could respond, the sound of breaking news music came from the living room TV. Mom had left it on low volume as background noise, but now the urgent tone caught everyone's attention. "We interrupt your regular programming for breaking news," the anchor's voice carried clearly from the next room. "What now?" Dad muttered, but Jessica was already reaching for the remote to turn up the volume. The news anchor appeared on screen, looking appropriately serious. "Good evening. We're following breaking news about what's being called the largest technology acquisition in our city's history. Mercury Financial, one of the region's biggest banking institutions, has just announced a partnership deal worth $200 million with a local software company for a complete overhaul of their digital infrastructure." My blood went cold. Mercury Financial. The contract I'd been working on for 8 months, the one that would make or break Quantum Solutions. The deal I hadn't told my family about because I couldn't bear the thought of their reactions if it fell through. 200 million? Jessica whistled low. That's serious money. Dad was shaking his head. Probably one of those Silicon Valley companies coming in to take over local businesses. Mark my words, it'll be some outfit from California with more money than sense. The anchor continued. The partnership will revolutionize how Mercury Financial handles everything from customer transactions to internal data management. The software company Quantum Solutions has been working closely with Mercury's leadership team for the past year to develop what experts are calling the most advanced banking platform in the region. The fork slipped from Jessica's hand, clattering onto her plate. Did they just say Quantum Solutions? I couldn't speak. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Mercury's CEO Robert Harrison called the partnership transformational and praised Quantum Solutions' innovative approach to solving complex financial technology challenges, the anchor was saying. The company, founded just 3 years ago, has quickly established itself as a leader in custom software development. Dad was staring at the TV with his mouth slightly open. Wait a minute. Quantum Solutions, isn't that the name of your little? Before he could finish the sentence, my phone rang. Not the polite buzzing I usually kept it on during family dinners, but the full ring volume I'd forgotten to turn down. And it wasn't just ringing, it was set to speaker mode from my last conference call. The caller ID lit up the screen clearly enough for everyone at the table to read. Robert Harrison, Mercury Financial CEO. Time seemed to freeze. 4 pairs of eyes stared at my phone as it rang a second time, then a third. I knew I should answer it, knew Robert was probably calling to discuss the press release, but I couldn't move. Are you going to answer that? Mom whispered. On the 4th ring, I finally reached for the phone, but my hand was shaking so badly I accidentally hit the speaker button while trying to answer. Alex. Robert Harrison's booming voice filled the dining room. I hope you're watching the news, my friend. We did it. The board unanimously approved the full package. 200 million for the complete implementation, plus the performance bonuses we discussed. I tried to speak but no words came out. Alex, you there? Don't tell me you're speechless. This is the biggest tech deal in the city's history, and it's all because of your brilliant work. I'm here, Robert, I managed to croak out. Outstanding. Listen, I know it's Sunday evening, but I had to call. The press conference went perfectly and the board wants to fast-track everything. We're talking about a complete digital transformation. Every system, every process, everything built on your platform. Dad was gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles had gone white. That's wonderful news, I said, acutely aware that my entire family was hanging on every word. Wonderful. Alex, this is career-defining stuff. You've created something revolutionary here. The efficiency improvements alone are going to save us millions annually, and the security features are unlike anything we've seen. Robert's enthusiasm was infectious, even through my shock. We've worked hard to get it right. Hard. You've been practically living at our offices for the past 8 months. The dedication you've shown, the attention to detail. It's exactly why we knew you were the right choice for this partnership. Jessica was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. I have to ask, Robert continued, and I know we discussed this briefly before, but the board wants to know if Quantum Solutions would be interested in an exclusive contract for our expansion into other markets. We're talking about taking your platform national, Alex. Potentially 20 to 30 additional financial institutions. I felt like I was going to pass out. That would be incredible. Incredible is right. We're looking at potentially tripling your current contract value over the next 3 years. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, let's celebrate this victory. Are you free tomorrow morning? I'd like to set up a meeting with our executive team to discuss the implementation timeline. Of course, whatever works for your schedule. Excellent. Oh, and Alex, I hope you don't mind, but I mentioned your name specifically in the press conference. The reporters were very interested in learning more about the genius behind the technology. You might be getting some calls. The line went quiet for a moment and I realized Robert was waiting for a response. That's fine, I said. Thank you for the opportunity, Robert. Thank you. Alex, you've revolutionized our entire operation. I should be thanking you. Anyway, I'll let you get back to your evening. Congratulations again, my friend. You've earned every bit of this success. The call ended, leaving my dining room in complete silence except for the continued news coverage from the living room. In related news, the anchor was saying, Quantum Solutions founder Alex Morgan has been named one of the city's top young entrepreneurs by the Chamber of Commerce. The company, which Morgan started 3 years ago, now employs over 50 people and has contracts with several major corporations beyond Mercury Financial. Dad slowly looked from the TV to me, then back to the TV. 50 employees? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Mom was shaking her head in disbelief. Alex, did that man just say $200 million? For the initial contract, yes. Initial contract? Jessica's voice came out as a squeak. There are several other projects in development, I said quietly. The news had moved on to other stories, but nobody was paying attention anymore. Dad was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. You own a company with 50 employees, he said slowly, as if testing how the word sounded. 53 as of last week. And Mercury Financial just paid you $200 million. It's a 3-year contract. But yes. Mom was crying now, though I wasn't sure if it was from shock or something else. But you live in a basement apartment. Because I like it there. It's quiet and it's close to the office. I own the building. That revelation hit the table like a bomb. You own the building? Jessica repeated weakly. I bought it 2 years ago when the previous owner was looking to sell. It made sense as an investment and it gave me control over my living situation. Dad was rubbing his temples. How many buildings do you own? Just the one residential property. But Quantum Solutions owns our office building downtown, and we're looking at purchasing another one for expansion. The questions came rapid fire after that. How long had I been working with Mercury Financial? 8 months of intensive collaboration, 2 years of smaller projects before that. How many other clients did we have? 12 major contracts, dozens of smaller ones. Why hadn't I told them about any of this? Because every time I tried to talk about work, I got lectured about getting a real job. But the way you dress, Mom said weakly. The old car, the basement apartment. You look like you're struggling. I dress comfortably because I work long hours and I don't need to impress anyone with designer clothes. The car runs perfectly fine. I don't see the point in buying something expensive just to prove I can afford it. And I've explained about the apartment. Jessica was scrolling through her phone frantically. There's an article here from 6 months ago about rising tech companies in the region. Quantum Solutions is listed as one of the top 3 fastest-growing businesses in the city. She held up her phone, showing a photo of me at what was apparently a Chamber of Commerce event. I was wearing a suit and receiving some kind of award. When was this taken? Dad asked. March, I think. At the annual business recognition dinner. You never mentioned winning an award. I shrugged. You never asked about my work. You just told me to get a real job. The silence that followed was the heaviest I'd ever experienced in that dining room. Dad was staring down at his plate, Mom was still crying quietly, and Jessica looked like she was trying to solve a complex mathematical equation in her head. Finally, Dad looked up at me. Alex, I owe you an apology. Dad. No, let me say this. I've been completely wrong about you, about what you've been doing. I thought you were wasting your life, throwing away your potential. But you were building something incredible and I was too stubborn to see it. Mom reached for my hand again and this time I didn't pull away. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. We've been horrible to you. You weren't horrible. You were worried. I understand that. Worried. Jessica laughed, but it was a hollow sound. We've been treating you like a failure for 3 years, and you've been more successful than any of us. The news had cycled back to the Mercury Financial story, and now they were showing footage from the press conference. Robert Harrison was at a podium, and behind him was a large screen displaying the Quantum Solutions logo. That's your company logo, Mom said softly as if she couldn't quite believe it. Yeah. It's beautiful. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, watching as Robert praised our partnership and outlined Mercury Financial's plans for the future. When they showed a brief video about Quantum Solutions offices, with shots of our development team working on the banking platform, I heard Dad draw in a sharp breath. That's a serious operation, he said. We've worked hard to build it. Where did you learn to do all this? You were in law school. I taught myself programming in high school, kept studying it in college even though I was pre-law. When I left law school I already had the technical skills. I just needed to learn the business side. And you did that on your own? I had help. Mentors, advisors, other entrepreneurs who were willing to share their experience. There's a whole community of people who support each other in this industry. Dad was shaking his head again. 3 years. You built all this in 3 years. Well, I had some advantages. No family to support, low overhead, and I was willing to work constantly. The first year was brutal, 18-hour days, 7 days a week. But it was worth it. Jessica set down her phone. Alex, I need to ask you something and I want you to be honest. Okay. How much is your company worth? I hesitated. The valuation question was complicated and I wasn't sure I wanted to get into the details. It's hard to say exactly. We've had some preliminary discussions with investors who think we could be worth anywhere from 50 to 80 million, but we're not looking to sell. The number hit the table like another bombshell. 50 to 80 million? Mom whispered. Those are just estimates. The real value is in the long-term contracts and the technology we've developed. Dad was quiet for a long moment, then he said, Alex, I need you to know something. I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago, but I was too proud and too stupid to admit I was wrong. I know you were trying to protect me. No, he said firmly. I was trying to control you. There's a difference. I wanted you to follow the path I understood, the safe path. But you chose the brave path, and you succeeded beyond anything I could have imagined. The conversation continued for another hour, with my family asking questions about everything from the technical aspects of what we did to the business challenges of running a growing company. For the first time in years, I felt like they were actually interested in my life rather than trying to fix it. When Jessica's phone rang with a call from her boyfriend, she answered it with obvious excitement. You need to turn on the news right now, she told him. My little brother just became the most successful person in our family. As the evening wound down, Mom insisted on making coffee so we could sit and talk more. Dad had found several more articles about quantum solutions online and was reading them with the same intensity he used to bring to bank reports. There's an interview here where you talk about your vision for the company, he said. You sound like you really know what you're doing. I hope so. We've got a lot of people depending on us now. 53 employees and their families, Mom said thoughtfully. That's a big responsibility. It is. But it's also an incredible opportunity to build something that matters. As I prepared to leave that night, Dad walked me to the door. Alex, I want you to know that I understand now why you stopped coming to family dinners. Dad. Every time you tried to talk about your work, I shut you down. I made you feel like your dreams were worthless. That must have been incredibly frustrating. It was hard, I admitted. But it also motivated me. Every time someone said I was wasting my time, I worked harder to prove them wrong. Well, you certainly did that. He paused, looking uncomfortable. I also want you to know that you're welcome here anytime. And from now on, I promise to listen when you talk about your work. I'd like that. And Alex, next Sunday, why don't you bring some of your team for dinner? I'd like to meet the people who helped you build this company. As I drove home through the quiet streets, my phone buzzed with messages from team members who had seen the news coverage. The Mercury financial deal was huge for Quantum Solutions, but the real victory had happened at my family's dinner table. For 3 years, I'd been building something meaningful while my family dismissed it as playing around. Tonight, they finally saw what I'd been trying to show them all along. That sometimes the most important work happens in basements and late-night coding sessions, not in corporate offices with traditional career paths. The next morning brought a flood of interview requests from local business publications and tech industry blogs. But the message that meant the most came from my dad. Saw the article in the business section about your company. Saved 3 copies. Can't wait to show them to everyone at the bank. Proud of you, son. 6 months later, Quantum Solutions announced our expansion into 3 new markets, with total contracts worth over $500 million. We'd grown to over 100 employees and moved into a new headquarters downtown. But the success that mattered most to me had happened that Sunday evening, when my family finally understood that the computer stuff they'd dismissed was actually the foundation of something extraordinary. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't about proving people wrong. They're about giving them the chance to see you clearly for the first time. As I write this, we're preparing to launch our platform in 12 new cities, and Robert Harrison has become one of our biggest advocates, introducing us to financial institutions across the country. The basement apartment has been converted into my home office. though I've since bought a house in the hills overlooking the city. But every Sunday I still have dinner with my family. And now, instead of lectures about getting a real job, our conversations focus on the challenges and opportunities of building a technology company that's changing how financial institutions serve their customers. The computer phase, as they used to call it, turned out to be the foundation of everything I dreamed of building. And finally, my family was there to see it unfold.